Welcome to Freedom Forest, guys, the 3-acre edible oasis that we're creating here in the south of England. Where we like to try lots of new things and push the boundaries with what we can grow using permaculture and no-dig methods. Absolutely no chemicals, weed killers or synthetic fertilisers, just what nature provides. We are Dan and Laurie, and we really hope that you enjoy following our journey and seeing what we've been up to this year. The year started with a prolonged big freeze, which is unusual for us here in the south, and this resulted in things like frozen pipes and crop losses, which we don't normally experience. And it was observing these unusual weather conditions that triggered the plans for another big project which has dominated a lot of particularly Dan's time throughout this year, and that was to fully insulate and heat our storage shed to give better protection to the crops that we grow, which see us right through the winter. A project which is still ongoing and we'll show more on later in this video. We were still harvesting crops in January. We call these crops our winter survival crops, and they are oca, mashua, and Jerusalem artichokes mainly. We also still had winter salad coming out of our polytunnel, although there were times when it was frozen when we couldn't harvest at all. We did still have some kale to harvest, but we actually lost some of the plants to cold for the first time ever, along with Brussels sprouts and nearly all of our purple sprouting broccoli as well. February started with Dan building us a 4-bay composting setup, which was very much needed and we are putting to good use now. Yakon and Jerusalem artichokes are two crops that we continue to harvest a lot of in February and right through the deepest parts of winter and into early spring in fact. Both are in the sunflower family and with a good mulch layer will sit happily in the ground even in our colder winters here. So they are great winter crops to rely on when trying to provide as much of your own food as possible. We just harvest them as needed and they help us to remain up to 60% self-sufficient in our food needs right through the winter. We sowed extra early potatoes on the 10th of February into one of our polytunnels to make use of the space and the favourable environment during the off-season. We hadn't done this before and we got the idea from our friends Bruce and Annie on their YouTube channel Off-Grid Bruce. The thing that we always do for Valentine's Day is spend the day together sorting out our propagation area. Very romantic, I know, but it's perfectly timed for our optimal first sowing dates here. And it motivates us having a nice tidy area to work in, even if it doesn't stay that way for long. March was all about bed prep, ready for planting, and seed sowing of course. One day I'd like to think I'd have all of the bed prep done at the end of the previous year, but it is quite a nice job to do in the spring. At first I felt a little overwhelmed by all of my seeds for early March, but as soon as I worked out which ones to put in what size trays, it all came together. So this week is all about bed prep for us. And today we're making a start up here on our main growing area and we're going to be clearing and recomposting a lot of these beds and getting them ready for planting. Whilst I was just sorting out our lunch, Dan has been up here doing an amazing job on these beds. They are looking so good already. Seriously, this guy is an absolute working machine. He is amazing when it comes to this kind of stuff. I get completely overwhelmed by jobs this big, but he just gets his head down and goes for it. There he is, the workhorse. Give us a wave, Dan. We gave our net house a complete makeover in March as well, and we've finally got rid of the dreaded black plastic and turned it into a beautiful no-dig wood chip topped growing area. On the 8th of March we had snow, and by the 16th of March I was getting my feet dirty for the first time of the year, finishing the composting. And on the 18th I sowed my first outdoor seeds. So if you're watching this and you're new to no dig, the beauty of this style of bed prep is that you literally just lay your compost on the top of the soil, and then you let all the worms and the microorganisms do all the hard work for you. They're going to come up and they're going to take down a lot of the nutrients down to deep into the soil. And also the rain will help to rain all of this nutrient and feed down into your soil. And so if you look at it a bit like every time it rains, the fresh compost layer is like a filter, and that's creating a compost tea that gets watered through into your beds below with each rainfall. We made a hotbed for the first time using human manure from our composting toilet to give our tomatoes and pepper some extra warmth, as we don't have power in our polytunnels. And we've got all of our materials ready. We've got some horse manure, fresh horse manure, some straw, some leaves, some wood shavings, and we've also got human manure. We've got what? We also pruned our stone fruit trees in March. Dan planted out all of our seed potatoes. And continued to harvest as much fresh salad and greens as we could eat from our polytunnel. March was a busy month. By the beginning of April, our food forest was bursting into life, and it was time to give it a good tidy up. And also put in some new perennial plants and herbs. In mid-April we took our last big harvest of yakon, and a lot of this we pressed and turned into juice. Now it's getting quite late for harvesting yakon. It is the middle of April now. We did our last harvest about 10 days ago, but we have still got heaps of plants here ready to go, so we're hoping we're going to find some good tubers. Okay, so we're going to harvest this plant here because this is the biggest plant that we've got left out of everything in this bed. Look at all of this. This is all the growing tips here. That is the biggest chunk of growing tip I think we've ever had. What have we got on this one? There's a few goodies.
So before we can press our yakon, we have the equally fun part of having to smash it and pulverise it up. And I made this morning. This is just a bit of cypress wood I had around. And I've actually got this, it funnily enough matches. It's a stainless steel. This is for like a champagne cooler. And I found this years ago and it's been in the bushes. And again, being stainless steel, it is stored beautifully. And
clearly we don't drink champagne.
Yeah, we don't drink champagne, but I knew it would have a use one day anyway. So let's get some of these in and see how it's going to go. Look at that, Yakon Juice. Oh my god. Wow.
And so the other thing you can do once you've got your Yakon juice as well is this is the juice you need to make your own Yakon syrup. So yeah, we've done that in another video, so make sure you check that one out as well if you're interested in making Yakon syrup. By the middle of April, our hotbed and propagation area was full up with seedlings, and we had lots of veggies in the ground too. Peas, onions, kohlrabi and salads, all from transplanted plugs. And carrots were just germinating too, that we had planted from seed. And our garlic from an October planting was growing on beautifully too. We used the covers to stop the birds scratching out the young plants and seedlings. Yeah, more leeks in this bed. They've been in all winter. Again, we're just harvesting those as we need. And the overhaul of our strawberry bed that you might have seen in one of our previous videos is definitely paying off. There is still quite a lot of sorrel mixed in with it here. This is all the sorrel. Just kind of pull out any chunks that I see. But the strawberries are actually bouncing back a lot better than I expected. So really pleased with that. And as you can see, they just grow up through the wood chip and they just love it. We had so many dandelions growing in the food forest, so I made dandelion honey, or syrup as some people prefer to call it, for the first time, and it was so delicious. I also began harvesting some of the beautiful fresh young stinging nettles that grow wildly to dry for teas later in the year. And we continued to keep sowing more seeds, as April is another one of the really big months for spring sowings. By May, our food forest was in full bloom, and we were getting really excited by the prospect of all the beautiful fresh fruits that we would soon be harvesting. We've got blueberries here, the flowers are all just coming on the blueberries. Literally everything is blooming at the moment, or has been blooming in the last few weeks. We've got aronia berries here which are just forming their flower buds, and these flower beautifully. I planted out a whole hedge of elderberries along the back fence here, and they are coming on really well. So you can see they've leafed up beautifully here, and we're going to let them come up and just create a new canopy layer here. And obviously the berries are great for us for harvesting. I work a lot with those. And look at the blossoms covering this. This is by far the most blossom we have had on this quince tree to date. It is absolutely stunning. It almost reminds me more of a magnolia tree. If you'd like to see more on our food forest, we have a whole playlist on our channel all about it, with lots of tours, and we'll be adding lots more tours this coming season. Dan had pruned an oak tree, so we decided to make use of the logs and inoculated them with lots of different mushroom varieties. One thing that I'm really determined to grow for ourselves is mushrooms. And mushrooms is one of the few fresh products that we still buy in on a regular basis. And whilst the little plastic containers that they nearly always come in are quite useful, especially for us, and especially when we sell some produce, we do recycle them. It's just another industrial process and another part of that product that I'd rather not use. And when you grow mushrooms for yourself, there is so many more options and flavours. So yeah, it's something that we're really excited about. So we have just done another load of mushroom logs, as you can see here. Early in the month, I had to start clearing the salad from our polytunnel, ready for tomatoes to go in. We've been harvesting as much salad as we could eat from these plants for the last 7 months, right through the winter, and it felt really sad to see them go. So Dan is now fitting the drip line to our freshly composted bed. And if you would like to see more about how we're installing these new drip lines, then check out our recent video, part 1 of a 2-part series about the drip lines which Dan has made already. It was a quick turnaround in the polytunnel, with every day being precious growing time at this time of year, and the tomatoes went straight in where the salad had been. Mid-May is a really poignant changeover time in the gardening calendar from winter to summer crops, so we had a lot happening, and the next excitement and welcome harvest for this point of the hungry gap was our extra early new potatoes from our polytunnel. Today it is the 11th of May, so these guys have been in the ground for exactly 3 months, and we are going to see what kind of harvest we've got and see if it's worth growing them again like this next year. Oh, ho, 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 there's some potatoes here. Oh my gosh. We can see some more. Oh, they look beautiful. Look at those. Okay, so that is a harvest from 22 plants of rocket potatoes, and I have to say we are pretty impressed with that, considering ideally, like I say, we would have started with chitted potatoes, so we kind of lost 2 weeks. Yeah, pretty happy with that harvest. That is a fair amount of new potatoes right there. So we're going to move on to the swifts now. Pretty impressive haul of potatoes from, I think this was 21 plants on this side, I seem to remember. So yeah, 21 plants, 3 months in the ground. These are our swifts. So we're actually going to weigh these now and see what the weight is. So let's check it out. And that is coming out at 17.5 pounds. Right, here's the swifts. Put those attached. Let's see what we've got. And that is 18 pounds. So very slightly more from the swifts. And yeah, like I said, I think it was 21 plants and 22 plants, or pretty much the same, 22 plants of each. Taste test time.
Oh, they're soft. Wow. It's like silk, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a taste like no other. Just yesterday we finished planting all of our beautiful summer crops into our polytunnels. We grow quite a combination of crops together in here, and it's not necessarily always put together in the sense of companion planting. Now, we don't purposely plant anything together that we know aren't good companions, but the main reason for the combinations that we grow together is actually to make the best use of this space. So what we're trying to do is layer, a bit like we do in the food forest. So you've got your layering systems, and then we always get some self-seeded nasturtiums, which I absolutely love. I love the fact that they just continue to grow here, even though I've only ever planted them in once. Okay, so polytunnel 2. So there's lots of climbing layers in this tunnel, and our climbing layers are beautiful, juicy melons. So this is one of the things that Dan is very excited about growing this year. And he has gone mad for taro. So the same is in the tunnel next door, T1. Our main crop through the middle of these tunnels is tomatoes. By the end of May, we had nearly all of our summer crops in the ground. Outside, we had planted all of our winter squash, sweet corn, courgettes, sunflowers, taro, sweet potatoes, and we had sweet peas flowering and starting to form pods. And our outdoor salad was growing on beautifully. From here on though, growing got a little more challenging, as it turned out to be a very dry spring. And watering can get quite challenging for us, as we don't have mains water supply, and we only have low pressure gravity fed hoses or watering cans, so it's a slow process when we do have to water outdoors. By early June we were harvesting our first strawberries, maybe one more, and getting back on with some maintenance jobs. I also added 3 King Stropharia mushroom beds to our food forest. When I was up here looking for strawberries earlier, I noticed that we've got our first purple sugar snap peas, which are just about ready. And I think this is the biggest one here. So I'm going to eat my first purple sugar snap. Early June is when a lot of our summer crops start to get going for us here in the south, and things are just starting to get going. We are a little bit behind where we would normally be, and that is for 2 reasons. One of those is because we've had literally no rainfall for nearly a month now. And the second thing is because we had quite an unusually cold spring, so some of the plants were slower to get going. Our next planting, we're going to expand, and I'm going to sow the whole of this bed with elephant garlic. We absolutely love elephant garlic. We harvest it around the end of June or beginning of July, depending on how things are looking. So that is nearly ready to come out of the ground, and that is one of my favourite crops to harvest. I get super excited about that. By mid-June, our beds were full with parsnips, carrots, onions, herbs, beetroot, kohlrabi, and much more. And our potatoes were looking great. And even though we still got a really good harvest from these potatoes, we have learnt a big lesson this year, and that was that we should have been watering our potatoes more regularly during the dry period, which was when they would have also been really getting going. We decided to do a rain dance, as we didn't want a full drought like we had the year before. Somebody heard us as soon after it did start raining, and to date we've had more rain than I have ever known. And then the abundance of broad beans began. Then snap peas began, and I also started harvesting medicinal herbs like feverfew and chamomile for making tinctures and drying. So it's been 5 weeks since we showed you around our polytunnels, which we did back on the 26th of May. And the growth throughout June has been crazy, good crazy. By mid-June, the harvests were epic, with berries coming on in our food forest. We had potatoes ready and wheelbarrows full of garlic. I think this is the biggest elephant garlic I have ever grown. Wow. That is massive, absolutely massive. Although we did nearly lose all of our elephant garlic later on, as we struggled to get crops like this fully dry, as we were now having a very wet, moist summer. It is the second week of July, just, and our food forest has been a mixture of successes and challenges so far this season. We have been enjoying amazing crops of raspberries so far this year. But the interesting thing is, these are our autumn raspberries and they are cropping better than our summer raspberries right now. Our fruit trees overall this year haven't got as much fruit on the main trees. For the age of our trees, we had quite a lot of apples last year. They're just in their 5th growing season now, most of these trees. And yeah, so this year we don't have so many apples, which is kind of normal. I think a lot of fruit trees do go big every other year. Also, this little plum tree last year was absolutely laden in plums for its size. And this year it's just got literally a handful of fruits on it. But I think this is also potentially a result of 2 consecutive really hard growing seasons. We had a big drought last year, which I think is having a knock-on effect to the trees this year. And also this year we had a 6-week period plus, 6 weeks plus of drought already. So some of our new plantings and our younger trees are struggling because we can't always get enough water down here regularly enough to really keep things thriving. But other things are thriving, like the blueberries. And we really must get some net on this soon because these blueberries are just about to ripen. And this bush in particular is looking absolutely lush, big plump blueberries. And this bush here is covered. Our gooseberries have been really good. We've had a lot of gooseberries. We've got a run of gooseberry bushes all through the middle here, both red and green gooseberries. I generally find our Hinamaki red gooseberries are more productive, but I'm not sure if that's just because I can see the fruit more and then I don't see the fruit on the green ones, and the birds and the squirrels get the fruit first. By mid-July, I noticed something didn't seem quite right with a lot of our tomatoes in one of our polytunnels. There just didn't seem to be enough fruit setting on them. So it turns out tomatoes don't actually like setting fruit and will become stressed when temperatures are above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a little bit more than 32 degrees centigrade. Now, I don't have a thermometer in this polytunnel permanently, but I do know that it has regularly been reaching temperatures over 40 degrees centigrade. So this would explain why our lower tomatoes that are setting fruit before the heat comes, when the weather is cooler, are doing exactly what they should. And then the middle section, when we've had heat waves, aren't setting fruit. But usually when we come through this period and later on in the year, these tomatoes become really prolific again. And if you'd like to hear more about what I learned and observed with my tomatoes, then check out the video "My Tomatoes Are Not Fruiting" on our channel. So we are finally getting to enjoy a few of our own fresh blueberries now that I put a net over a couple of our plants. And I don't really like using the nets for a few different reasons, but this is the first year that we've actually had more than just a handful of blueberries, so it is kind of worth it. So I've just come up to the tunnels to harvest some fresh things for our lunch. I'm going to get some trombone courgettes, some New Zealand spinach and some fresh basil from the tunnel next door to make a basil and courgette pesto to put on some pasta. But yeah, it's actually raining again at the moment. There's been lots of showers today. It's been really wet and windy overall this last week. We harvested more potatoes this month, and we also had our best harvest of onions to date. Although, like with the garlic, we struggled later to fully dry them. Lots learnt though, as always, on how we can do this better for next year. And the blueberries kept on coming, together with lots of other delicious berries from our food forest too. The July harvests were beautiful and abundant, but the end of the month came with sadness as we had to say goodbye to our much loved old girl Millie after many months of ups and downs with a stomach issue. She had a great life though, and we are all very thankful of the good times that we had together. And she is still with us forever at Freedom Forest. In August, our harvest started to get even more exciting and prolific, and most of our crops were growing on really well. Wow, look at that big watermelon that I've got there. Just spotted that one. And by the end of the month, we were harvesting various melons, including our first watermelon, chili peppers, buckets of tomatoes, aubergines and sweet corn. We also had our first big harvest of aronia berries from our food forest, which I made into a delicious jam. And we've got a beautiful watermelon here, which again, I don't think that one is that far off, so we're going to be enjoying watermelons soon. And this year we've just grown sweet corn, super sweet sweet corn. And then we've got a load of different squash all everywhere in this bed. And we have got some really good fruits forming up here. This one is a jumbo pink banana. And then just here, I think that one is one that's called Sweet Me. As you can see, there is lots of lush greenery going on in here right now, and then we've also got a few strawberries. So we've got so many courgettes this year. We put in way too many plants, but we are producing an absolute abundance of food from them. Some areas were starting to get a little wild on us though, and the critters were moving in on us too, with moles tunnelling under our carrots and rats in the polytunnel. But we have had one semi-disaster in this tunnel, tunnel 1, and that is that we've had a rat in the tunnel, and the purple sweet potatoes that we've got as a ground cover on this side, the foliage had been so lush and beautiful and they were growing really well. And then I realised that we've had a rat in and he's dug under or chewed off nearly all of the sweet potatoes. And again, same story as everywhere else. everywhere has been a little bit neglected. But with that neglect, I also just see such beauty. It's so wild and beautiful at the moment. And if you'd like to see exactly how much food we harvested from just one of these polytunnels, then check out our previous video. From here on, the harvest just kept on coming. With chili peppers, we made smoked paprika. I made sun-dried tomatoes, courgette and tomato chutney, and my favourite roasted tomato paste. I also gathered more medicinal herbs from our food forest for tinctures and teas. Our little family pear tree is absolutely loaded with pears that we have just started to harvest now. Sweet corn tastes even more amazing when eaten within minutes of harvesting. And one of our favourite ways to enjoy it is by cooking it on the fire with the husks still on. This really helps to keep some moisture on the corn and stops them getting burnt. As you can see, they come out super succulent and moist, and it tastes absolutely divine. Okay, so from tunnel 1, I have just harvested 12 cucumbers, an aubergine, a green pepper which had snapped off, cherry tomatoes, big tomatoes, and some mild spicy red peppers, and our first few Cape gooseberries too. You can literally feel the hot air just flowing out of this tunnel as you stand by the door here. But I've been in and harvested another beautiful melon, and this is the orange variety that we haven't tried yet this year, so looking forward to that one. By the end of September, our main outdoor growing area, or our kitchen garden area, was looking truly wild but absolutely stunningly beautiful, and it was still providing us with so much fresh produce. Then at the very end of the month, we harvested our outdoor sweet potatoes. We should have had a huge amount of sweet potatoes this year, as we gave them twice the amount of space as we normally do. But unfortunately, our resident rats had been in before us and put pay to a lot of our harvest. This is disappointing so far. Not what we want to be seeing. So guys, we've just had a pretty disastrous day harvesting our sweet potatoes that the rats and the mice have got to long before a lot of the potatoes even had a chance to mature. So I do not want to take any chances with our beautiful pumpkin and winter squash harvest. So it's late in the day, we're hot, muddy, disgusting, but we are going to quickly as we can, haul in a load of these winter squash and get them in the polytunnel curing off, where hopefully they'll be less appealing for the rats to sniff them out. As we move into October, our Cape gooseberries and sweet peppers were really providing vibrant colours for us. Seasonal eating is truly such a delight. And as we continued to harvest our crops for winter storage, it was also time to change beds over again, clearing out summer crops and planting hardier winter veg. And this is all of our own homemade compost that I'm putting on this bed today. And I'm really excited to see if we have a noticeable difference in growth next year, because this homemade compost with all its vegetable scraps and lots of different plant diversity that we've been adding over the last year should make it a lot more nutritious than the municipal waste compost that we have been using in the past. There is certainly a lot more life and activity going on in the soil already, and that's now going to be being added to our beds. So I've probably said this before, but I actually find spreading compost really calming and therapeutic. I could actually do it a lot quicker than I do, but I don't know, there's just something really soothing about smoothing it all out over the soil and just feeling the love and the goodness that is going back into the earth, I guess, and just thinking about the beautiful crops that it's going to grow for us next year. Yeah, it's almost like a bit of a meditation. I sowed garlic this month, planted the polytunnel up with winter salads, greens and herbs, and we moved all of our pumpkins into our newly insulated storeroom and workshop that Dan has been working really hard on to get finished in time for winter. Autumn is such a beautiful and giving season, probably my favourite of all the seasons, as I just love autumn colours too. I think that's one of the reasons why I love harvesting sweet chestnuts so much as well, because of their beautiful brown glossy coat. By the beginning of November, our winter salads and greens were off to a great start, and I'm sure this is due to the homemade compost we used this year. We were still harvesting the last of our peppers or capsicums, but our harvests and homestead life was definitely starting to take a slower pace, which I am always ready for at this time of year and feels very natural. Our oca bed was growing strongly and nearly ready to start harvesting from. And we also had what we felt was a very successful first harvest of taro, a tropical tuber that Dan has been learning about all year. And we have been enjoying lots of taro curries with it. Okay, so for outdoor winter crops, we have got our amazing Jerusalem artichokes and our Yakon, which I'll show you in just a moment. And we will start harvesting both of these crops any time from now. And these Jerusalem artichokes have literally just lost all of their leaves in the last couple of days. Only a few weeks ago they were looking beautiful, all covered with their lovely little miniature sunflowers. Near the end of the month we took our first harvest of Yakon. It had been very mild up to this point, but with some harder frosts forecast, it was time to protect the plants for the winter ahead. As we moved into December, it was time to make sure we were ready for winter, and we had decided to upgrade our solar system batteries to lithium, as our older lead-acid batteries weren't holding as much charge as they once did. Dan kept pushing ahead with our workshop refit, and in December we had a reclaimed log burner installed that was gifted to us from our neighbours. So we can now keep our stored crops above 5 degrees in here on colder nights, which is an awesome milestone. This space is currently doubling up as our winter yoga space too, until the next stage of fitting out the workshop side begins. Dan has nearly finished putting all of the cladding back on the outside now too. We took our first harvest of oca in December, and I really do need to get on with harvesting the rest of this colourful, tasty tuber now. if the rats and mice haven't got to them already. We've still been harvesting lots of beetroot and making yummy beetroot bean burgers. And we're enjoying stacks of winter salads and lots of beautiful food from our store. It has taken a long time to put this video together, looking back through a year's worth of footage, videos and photos. But I have enjoyed the process, and being reminded of what we have achieved, created, grown and learnt in 1 year is very satisfying and fulfilling. And it has made me even more excited about the season ahead. All of the individual videos used in making this one are in the video description if you'd like to see them in more detail too. We hope you have enjoyed this video as much as I have creating it and living it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to continue following our journey here. Massive thank you to our Patreons for the extra support that they give us, and thank you all for watching. And now it all begins again.